'Cause she my best friend. People really wouldn't understand that people like your drivers and your assistants are your best friend. Kichi was the only person in life that I can talk about anything to, that knew my deepest secrets. There was no male or female in my life that I told more stuff to than her.
He was one of the greatest boxers who ever lived. And on a random Monday morning, he sat there and watched his best friend kill his wife through a phone screen. Live. And there was nothing he could do about it. That man was Floyd Mayweather. And the woman who was killed, she had danced for Beyoncé, Rihanna, Janet Jackson, and was finally stepping into the spotlight as an actress. 30 years old, career on fire, life ahead of her, and then it was gone. This is the story of Stephanie Moseley and Earl Hayes. And let me tell you something. This is one of those stories that Hollywood tried very hard to move past, but we are not moving past it today. Stephanie Moseley was born on February 14th, 1984, in Vancouver, Canada. Valentine's Day baby. And from the time this girl could walk, dance was already in her. She started ballet at 2 years old. 2. By the time she was a teenager, she was competing across Vancouver, training under a teacher named Rachel Poirier, who mentored her for 6 years straight. Now, Stephanie pulled her teacher aside at some point and told her, "Please do not judge me for choosing commercial dance over classical ballet." Girl. At that age, she already knew exactly who she was and exactly what she wanted, and she was not going to apologize for it. Between 15 and 18, she was winning competitions, and by the time she aged out of that circuit, her mind was already made up. Los Angeles was calling. In 2002, at 18 years old, Stephanie packed up and moved to LA by herself. No connections, no safety net, just talent and the kind of quiet confidence that makes people stop and look twice. She joined a dance group called Best Kept Secret almost immediately, and that was the door that opened everything. She became a backup dancer for some of the biggest names in music history: Beyoncé, Rihanna, Janet Jackson, Usher, Mariah Carey, Chris Brown, Britney Spears, Jennifer Lopez. She appeared in films like Catwoman, Idlewild, and Mirror Mirror. She worked as associate choreographer on Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 1. She even played Jamie Foxx's wife in his 2006 TV special. And by 2013, she had landed a recurring role on VH1's scripted series Hit the Floor, playing a dancer on a fictional NBA cheer squad. This was the role that was finally putting her face on screen in a real and consistent way. The acting career she had been working toward was starting to materialize. Everyone who knew Stephanie kept saying the same things about her. Moving on, because now we need to talk about Earl. Earl Warren Hayes was born on May 28, 1980, in Detroit, Michigan. He came up the way a lot of young black men from Detroit came up, with rap as the vehicle and Los Angeles as the destination. He moved out west in the early 2000s, chasing the same dream Stephanie was already living. And Earl was not just talk. He had real credits. He had worked with 50 Cent, Timbaland, Dr. Dre, and Too Short. Around 2010, he signed to Floyd Mayweather's record label, Filthy Rich Records, and that deal pulled him directly into Mayweather's inner circle, the money team. The people always in the photos, always at the events, always in the room where it happened. In 2013, Earl and Stephanie appeared together in a Showtime documentary called 30 Days in May, which followed Mayweather as he prepared for a big fight. On camera, this couple looked like they had everything: glamorous, connected, moving up together. So what? What changed? Everything. Earl and Stephanie met through people they both knew in the industry and got married in 2008. For a few years, from the outside, they were the power couple, the kind of pair that made other people believe in love. But around 2012, something shifted inside Earl that he never fully recovered from. He became convinced that Stephanie was cheating on him. The name he kept coming back to was R&B singer Trey Songz. A source close to Hayes described him as absolutely crushed by these suspicions, saying he never really got over it and that the accusations involved more than one celebrity. But Trey Songz was the one Earl could not let go of. Now, here's the part that makes it so hard to sit with. None of it was ever confirmed. Stephanie and Trey Songz never said a word publicly. There was no proof, no receipts, nothing. But make it make sense. When a person has decided something is true in their mind, facts do not always reach them in time. The jealousy got so heavy that the two of them separated for roughly a year. They eventually came back together sometime in 2013 or early 2014. And Stephanie, she was genuinely hopeful. She was telling friends and family that she believed they were going to be okay. That the worst part was behind them. Ava Marcille, the model and actress who had known Stephanie for years, later said the relationship had its rough patches like any marriage, but she never saw anything that looked violent or truly dangerous. Earl's own close friend and life coach, Burl Wilkes, described him as a caring and generous man. Not someone who showed signs of violence. Anyways, what nobody around them fully understood was that Earl had been carrying that jealousy around for 2 solid years without ever dealing with it. Never got help for it, never truly let it go. He had just gone quiet. And quiet is not the same as healed. He was walking around with all of that resentment packed down inside him like a loaded weapon. And Stephanie had no idea. December 8th, 2014. Early Monday morning, around 7 a.m. Inside the apartment Earl and Stephanie shared in the Fairfax area of Los Angeles, a complex on Hauser Boulevard called the Palazzo East, the bathwater was already running. And the energy in that place had been dark and heavy for hours. These two had been up through the entire night, drinking heavily. From what investigators would later piece together, there were signs of drug use as well. Whatever argument had pulled them into that night had never stopped. It just kept going in circles until the sun came up. Miles away, Floyd Mayweather was awake with his girlfriend, Melissa Brim. His phone lit up. It was Earl on FaceTime. When Mayweather answered, the screen showed him everything he needed to know about the state of that apartment. Both Earl and Stephanie looked like they had been through it all night. For a moment, Earl put Stephanie on the phone. She spoke to Floyd briefly. Then Earl took the phone back. Mayweather tried to lighten the energy a little, asked Earl why he was calling so early. Earl said because he loved him. And then he said there was something else Floyd did not know. And then Earl reached down. And when his hand came back into the frame, it was holding a gun. Mayweather did not freeze. He tried to talk Earl down. He told him to put the gun away, to walk out of that apartment, to get a divorce if it had come to that, to just breathe and make a rational decision. But Earl stopped listening. He stepped away from the phone and left the camera pointed at nothing. The call stayed connected, though. The audio was still live. And that is when Mayweather heard everything. He heard the argument intensify. He heard Stephanie's voice. He heard her scream. And then he heard the shots, one after another. 10 to 12 rounds fired at close range inside that bathroom. The screaming stopped. Neighbors inside the Palazzo East complex heard the same thing.
I was sitting with Melissa Brim. My best friend called me on FaceTime. We was talking a little bit. He put Stephanie on the phone. I talked to her, and I could tell that they looked like they both were doing drugs and drinking real heavy. I could tell they'd been up all night. They was talking. I hear the bathwater running. He put it on FaceTime. He got back on the phone. I'm kind of getting choked up from this. So then I said, why you calling me so early in the morning? How you know I'm up? He said, because I love you. And he said, there's something else you don't know. And then I was like, huh? And then he reached down and put out a gun. I said, man, what are you doing with that gun? He started shooting. Then he shot her. And then he put the gun to his head. And that's what it was. Then I had to bury my best friend.
They called 911 at around 7:30 that morning, reporting that a woman had been screaming and that as many as 10 shots had been fired. When LAPD officers arrived and tried to push through the back bedroom door, they heard 2 more shots from inside the room. That changed everything about how they responded. The scene was reclassified immediately as a barricade situation. A SWAT team was called in. Residents on the lower floors of the building were evacuated, while police set up a full tactical operation outside. By the time SWAT finally breached that door, it was already over. They found Stephanie in the bathtub, shot multiple times. Wounds to her head, her body, and her legs. Earl was nearby. A single self-inflicted gunshot, wound to the head. Both were pronounced dead at the scene. Back on that FaceTime call, Mayweather had stayed on the line through all of it. He heard the shots. He heard the silence. And then Earl came back to the screen one final time, told Mayweather what he had done and what he was about to do to himself. Then one more shot. And the call went quiet. Now, here is where the investigation begins. The LAPD detectives from the West Bureau Homicide Division reached out to Mayweather's team the very next day, December 9th, to set up a formal interview. His lawyer arranged it before Mayweather left Los Angeles, and he cooperated fully. He sat down with investigators and walked them through everything he saw and heard on that FaceTime call from the beginning to the very end. That mattered more than people realize. Because Mayweather was the closest thing this case had to a live witness. He was on that call in real time. He heard Earl's state of mind. He heard the moment things shifted. He heard the shots. And he heard Earl come back to the screen afterward. His account gave detectives a window into motive that no crime scene photo could give them. No charges were ever brought against Mayweather. His role was exactly what it appeared to be. A man who answered a phone call and could not stop what was happening on the other end of it. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office conducted autopsies on both Earl and Stephanie. The results confirmed what the scene already showed. Stephanie died from multiple gunshot wounds. Earl died from a single self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Toxicology tests were ordered on both of them, but those results were never made public, which is standard practice once a case is closed, with no living suspect and no pending trial. The LAPD's full investigation confirmed the following. Earl Hayes shot Stephanie between 10 and 12 times at close range inside that bathroom before turning the gun on himself. There was no forced entry, no third party involved, no evidence pointing to anyone other than Earl. On December 10th, 2014, just 2 days after the shooting, the LAPD officially closed the case as a murder-suicide. Quick, clean, no loose ends. This case was closed before most people had even heard about it, and because Earl died at the scene, there was no arrest, no courtroom, no trial where Stephanie's name got to be said out loud in a space built for justice. The investigation ended where the crime ended, inside that apartment on Hauser Boulevard. But what the evidence laid out, when you line it all up, is a very clear picture of what happened and why. This was not a sudden snap. Earl had been building towards something for 2 years. He told Mayweather what he intended to do before he did it. He came back to the screen afterward to confirm it. A man does not do that in a moment of blind rage. That is a man who had been living inside this decision for a long time. The tributes started pouring in almost immediately. Rihanna posted a photo of Stephanie on Instagram. Simple caption, no words needed. Trey Songz posted on Twitter the day after, and this is the part worth paying attention to. He wrote that she was once an angel on earth, now watching over everyone from heaven, and that she would never be forgotten. But he never addressed the accusations that Earl had spent 2 years using as his justification. Not a word. Oh, so now we are just going to grieve in peace and not address the thing that apparently destroyed a marriage? Okay, moving on. Chris Brown wrote that she had danced with him on tour and was always the coolest person in the room. VH1 released a statement saying they were heartbroken to lose someone who had been such an important part of the Hit the Floor family, and that their prayers were with her loved ones. Her colleagues from Hit the Floor put together a GoFundMe memorial fund that raised over $8,700 for Stephanie's family. The show's executive producer, James LaRosa, publicly urged people to remember her for the light she brought into every room, not for the darkness of how she left it. The Vancouver dance community that first shaped her held vigils. Her old teachers and training partners remembered her as someone who had made all of them proud, and on social media, fans and fellow artists kept her name alive long after the news cycle moved on. Period. That woman knew what she had worked for. She knew what she had earned. And she was not wrong. Now, we would not be telling this story completely if we did not bring up what happened in 2018. Rapper 50 Cent, in the middle of one of his very public, ongoing feuds with Floyd Mayweather, publicly accused Mayweather of having had an affair with Stephanie himself. The claim was that Mayweather's own behavior was part of what had pushed Earl to the edge that morning. Let me be clear about something. That accusation was never supported by any evidence. It came during a beef. It was designed to land a hit on Mayweather's reputation, and it was never substantiated by anyone close to the case or the family. But hey, it did what it was designed to do. It kept people talking about this story, and it added a layer of noise over a situation that already had enough pain in it without manufactured drama being piled on top. Stephanie's legacy did not need that, but unfortunately, that is the world her story lives in. In February 2023, Investigation Discovery's podcast, Death by Fame, brought the story back to a wider audience. The episode was titled The Death of Stephanie Moseley and featured close friend Paul Becker, who shared personal memories of her talent and her warmth. Becker also spoke about one specific detail from the scene that morning that had not gotten much attention in the initial coverage: the fact that Stephanie was found in the bathtub. That detail tells you everything about how close range this violence was. The bathwater had been running when Mayweather first answered that call. She was in that bathroom when it happened. She never had a chance to get out of that room. Let me tell you something about Stephanie Moseley. She started dancing at 2 years old in Vancouver, Canada. 2 years old. By the time she was 18, she had spent more than half her life training, competing, and preparing for a career that most people only dream about. She moved to a brand new country by herself with nothing but her skill and her belief in herself. No connections, no safety net, just her. And she built something real. She performed for some of the biggest artists who have ever lived. She worked her way from backup dancer to associate choreographer to recurring actress on a nationally televised show. She was 30 years old, and she was nowhere near done. The people who loved her did not just lose a friend. They lost the person who had been connecting them to each other, lifting them up, pulling them forward. Every person who ever worked with her seemed to describe her the same way: warm, generous, the kind of woman who made a room feel different just by walking into it. And none of that story was Earl's to end. Because in stories like this one, there are always cries that nobody heard loudly enough before it was too late. And this story has a few of them worth sitting with. The first one is Stephanie's. Because Stephanie was not naive. She knew her marriage had been through something serious. She knew Earl had been carrying something heavy. But she chose to believe the hard part was over. She was hopeful, and that hope, as real and as human as it was, did not protect her, because the person she was trying to rebuild with had never actually put the weight down. He had just stopped talking about it. Girl, that is one of the most dangerous places a relationship can be. When the silence feels like peace, but it is really just pressure that has nowhere left to go. The second cry is the one nobody wants to talk about, and that is the cry of a man who is drowning in something: jealousy, insecurity, obsession, and never reached out for real help. Earl Hayes had people around him. He had a life coach. He had Floyd Mayweather, one of the most powerful men in his world, just a phone call away. And still, he carried this thing alone for 2 years until it consumed everything, including himself. That is not an excuse. Let me be clear. What he did was a choice, a devastating, unforgivable choice that ended the life of a woman who had every right to keep living hers. But understanding how a person gets to that place matters, because understanding it is the only way we ever stop it from happening again. The third cry, and this one lands different, is the one Mayweather had to live with after that call went quiet. He genuinely tried to stop it, and he still had to sit there and hear every single moment of it through a phone screen. No matter how much power or money or influence a person has, there are some things that cannot be undone once they are set in motion. And Mayweather has carried the weight of that morning ever since. Anyways, Stephanie Moseley deserved to see where her life was going. She deserved to find out what would have happened after hit the floor. She deserved to keep dancing, keep creating, keep connecting people together the way only she knew how. She deserved more time. And the fact that she did not get it is not something this story can wrap up neatly with a lesson and a bow. Some losses do not resolve. They just sit with you. But if there is anything this story asks of the people watching it, it is this: pay attention to the people around you. Not just to what they say, but to what they stop saying. Not just to the arguments, but to the silences that come after them. And if you are in a relationship where jealousy has crossed from feeling into control, where someone's pain has started to feel like your prison, tell someone you trust. Tell somebody. Because Stephanie told people she was hopeful, and nobody thought to ask the harder question. Rest in peace, Stephanie Moseley. February 14th, 1984, December 8th, 2014. 30 years old, and worth so much more than the way this story ended. If this one stayed with you, and I think it did, make sure you subscribe to True Crime TV so you never miss the next story. Drop a comment and tell us what you think. And share this one with somebody who needs to hear it. Because some